G'day and welcome back for more Space Engineers Survival. Last time we got the butterball all painted up and prettied up, and now it's time to try a little experiment. I've got an idea that I think will allow me to go scouting out for bases with the tick, and to do so without getting into too much trouble, I hope. My plan is basically to set up a bunch of movable but not mobile turrets so that I can set up an ambush for any vehicles that come after me. So instead of allowing the tick to fight any vehicle that comes chasing me, I'll just turn tail, run, go straight through a collection of turrets that I've placed on the ground, and hopefully those turrets will be adequate in order to take out whatever is chasing me. Eventually, I might even be able to make that design work as something that I can drop onto an enemy base in an offensive capacity as well. My idea behind the design that I want to do is making it with small ship parts so that they're as cheap as possible, but also making it so that it can last as long as I need it to and as long as I can manage to rearm it. It's going to be a very, very simple build, and I'm just going to pick up a couple of steel plates so that I can place down all of the parts and then show you what I was thinking. The design's going to be very, very basic, and it's pretty much going to be, well, let's pick a color that's a bit more military this time. Let's make it a little less green, make it a bit more grey, and make it a bit darker. I think that should be good. So it'll be a battery followed by a Gatling turret on top, and at the back of it, so that we've got a bit of extra power for the battery and we don't end up running out of power on these things and having it fail to protect me the way I want it to, we will also add a solar panel. That solar panel is probably going to be the first thing that gets damaged because it's such a large target, any stray bullets are going to hit it. But these things are meant to be somewhat disposable. Certainly more disposable than a vehicle, and certainly more disposable than any vehicle I might build a bunch of turrets onto. That being said, I don't really want them to be destroyed all that easily, so I will be placing some decoys on them as well. We clear those three out as we don't need those. Let's grab decoy. We also are going to need a beacon so that we can find these afterwards and be able to move them. And that's about it. I thought of placing an antenna on these, but beacons use less power. So rather than have something ready for a very rare use case where I would want to be able to control the turret, as if I'm going to be running from the enemy, I'm hardly going to be able to control this turret while I'm driving away from the enemy. So I'm probably not going to need the antenna. That way the beacon makes sense to me and we can use it to allow us to find these without using up all of our battery power. My plan is to have a bunch of legs sticking out from each corner, and at the end of each of these legs, actually I probably want that to be a square piece. Oh, nuts. Probably should have refilled my hydrogen before I started this, but I can finish off this design without it. We'll place a couple of blocks like this, placing our decoy in the middle. The decoy I'm not expecting to last very long, but there are going to be 4 of them. So hopefully they'll just increase the longevity, the survivability of these turrets by enough that they're worth their cost in iron and nickel. And that's the nice thing about this build, is that it's pretty much entirely iron and nickel based. It shouldn't cost all that much to lose one of these, and once I've set up a system where I can project these from the base and just weld them up as I want an extra one, they should be fairly easy to manufacture in a relatively large number. my plan would be to get about 5 or 6 of these and then use the ugly duckling with a few landing gear attached to it to move them around to where I want to set up my ambushes. I'm going to grab a bit more hydrogen. We'll place out the rest of those legs and then have a look at it before I weld everything up. On top of the decoy, I'm going to place a little armor shroud like this. And I realize that's going to do very little to protect them from any Gatling fire that comes directed towards them. However, I do want to keep this build cheap. So building this with heavy armor, it's just a bit more than I want to do. I think we'll get long enough out of the decoys, and if I'm wrong, we'll just do the design differently. We'll modify it as we need to. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think that's right. Did I do 5 over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. One risk I have with building a semi-static structure like this is that these will be resting directly on voxels, and there is a chance that the game will not completely behave itself, and with these resting on voxels they may sink in at times, and if they do that I could end up having explosive consequences despite nothing even attacking them, and that's going to suck if it happens. But hopefully, due to me being in single player, that should be much less likely. Things like that may even happen if I have landing gear. The only way I could think of to prevent it would be placing down a bed of armor blocks like this, which I could do anyway and just rest them on that, which would make it less likely for them to sink into the voxels. And we'll see if we need to do that. I'm going to try and rest them just as they are so I don't have to do too much to place them down. I can just move them around wherever I see fit. But again, that's something I'll keep in mind that I may have to do in order to upgrade and make sure these things remain functional. So I'm going to lay out the rest of these legs and then I will weld this up. And once that's done, we'll have a look at how I plan to modify the ugly duckling in order to make it capable of carrying these around. And while I'm doing that, doing the rest of these builds, I should probably order up all of the extra parts that I need, like the battery components, the telecommunications things, I think they're called, the giant radio components, and lastly I'm going to need a few solar panels, and probably also going to need a bunch of ammunition for these things if I'm going to build a few of them. And I don't think I've got enough magnesium to build much, so I'll need to go out and mine some of that, hopefully before it gets dark. I don't think I'm going to be able to get enough of these built before the end of today to allow for a trial of it tonight or today. And I'm certainly not going to do my first attack with these in the dark. I think that's asking for way too much trouble, so I'm not going to do it. And with the battery welded up, it is all finished. Let's take a look. So that's what the end product's going to be like, and we'll blueprint this shortly so that we can mass manufacture them. If I have a look in the control panel of this, we can go to the battery and see that in the daytime, it's actually going to charge with just that solar panel. And that's with the beacon set to broadcast out to 5,000 meters. And that should be far enough. I'll always know roughly where I've dropped these, so I won't need to go back to the specific location based on a beacon. I could use a GPS marker for the rough position and then use the beacon for the remaining. So I could even drop this down to a shorter distance to save on more power. Say if I drop this down to 2,000, I'll only use up 400 watts. And I might do that as the default. What we'll do is we'll name these so that we can blueprint them when we do. And I'm going to call this the sandbag forward defense turret. Okay. And we've just got to grind this off. Oh, come on, balance. Balance. Okay, that's all right. Now that it's disconnected, I can blueprint it. Control B. My blueprint list comes up and sandbag. There we go. Now we've got to figure out how we can project this from the base. And my thoughts on that were to use a rotor with a conversion to a small rotor head. I think it's going to be easiest to manufacture these just off to the left of the base here. So if I grab a few blocks and place them down like this, that's potentially going to be enough room. And then onto those, place a rotor. And on the rotor, remove the rotor part, weld up this bit. Oh, didn't bring enough steel tubes. Once we've got the rotor part, well, the rotor welded up, we can hop into the control panel and rotor. It'll be this one, I think. Yep, add small head. We'll lock this rotor because we don't want it spinning once the blueprint starts to be projected from it. We can weld up that rotor part, and now onto that we can place the projector. And I want a small ship projector. There we go. Small ship projector on there. And there we have it. We've got our projector, and I'm going to place one armor block here so we've got something to grind down once we have our projection on there. And I wonder if we can do it this way. If I hop in one of these chairs, go to external view, rotate. Can I get close enough? Oh, can I get close enough to get a decent view? I'm not sure. Let's go into our projector, which will be maybe this one. So I think the other ones are on the ships. Yep. So the other one is on the butterball and it is currently off, which means the one that's on is the one I'm after. Let's go blueprints. Let's grab our sandbag. Okay. And we can see our projection there. It's kind of small, but it is there. Then we'll go J. Keep projection because we want this to stay on after we've finished building it. And I think it'll be roll. Yeah. And then we just got to position it so that we can weld it where it's at. Maybe this way. I think that could be good. Let's have a look. Oh, yes, got it in one. I am so surprised I actually managed to pull that off. Eventually, I'd like to, if these things are effective, build a factory so that I can just have these welded up directly from the cargo in the base. But in order to do that now, I would have to build a whole bunch of conveyor tubes to a place where they're really only going to be temporary. And I think I can manage to hand weld the first production run of these devices before I go around trying. Well, I'd rather test them and make sure that their design is functional and effective before I start setting up a system to mass produce something that may not even work. And it shouldn't take me too long to hand weld these up. It's a few backpacks worth full of components, so it does take me a little while, but it's not too bad. One thing I will do while I remember is this could use some ammunition. Let's pop some rounds in there. And then I'm going to... Ooh, I was mentioning something about magnesium earlier, wasn't I? How are our magnesium levels? I think they are somewhat low. Magnesium. We have 32 remaining. Plus 3. Yeah, we're low. Okay. That is good to know. So, why don't I, while it's still light out, go and take the butterball out for a spin, dig out our magnesium mine, since I don't think I've actually taken a ship into it. Ever. So that might make a bit of work to do. And if we get a single load from the butterball, I'd say we won't be needing to get any magnesium for quite some time. So worth doing this while it's still light out for obvious reasons, so that I don't end up crashing into something that I just don't see. Sometimes your display markers can be hidden and you press the H key to switch what signals are displayed, but it is not showing up with my detector for some reason. Oh, I think I know why. I think I might know why. Where is our detector? For some reason it is set to 1 meter. Let's expand that out to 50 meters. Oh, and now we can see the magnesium. There we go. Wasn't the displays at all. But that is a handy shortcut to be aware of. The one that I'd always forgotten about and barely ever use because I like the standard display. So I'm going to drill a big hole to make the entrance to this mine quite simple and safe to fly in. And then we'll grab some magnesium. And hopefully at that point, all of the parts will have been manufactured that we need for 5 more of those sandbags to be built. I do wonder why that ore detector was set to just 1 meter of range. I would never have done that myself because I have no reason to reduce the range of the ore detector. And I didn't think they were set to that by default. At least in the past they never were. And it seems like an odd choice to have them set to their very bare minimum range, where most people will probably think they're broken, rather than realize that we may be able to just alter the range to fix our problem. And so it's all very strange. I wonder if that's a bug or if it is actually intentional. Okay, that's about it for our mining trip. We're at just over 100,000 tons. 100,000 tons. 100 tons. So let's head back home. Not going to do the 105 this time. That was a little bit scary last time. I would much prefer to have a relatively calm return to base with plenty of power. Although plenty might be a bit of an exaggeration given how hard this is to lift right now. But it is still a lot easier than it was last time. Let's start welding up the next one of the sandbags. It's relatively easy to do this by hand. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's not terribly difficult. And it's pretty much just lining them up and welding away. Would be nice to have a welding ship to do this, as that would be a whole lot quicker, as I could load it up with everything that I need to build this device, but that's going to mean building a welding ship, and I don't really want to do that just yet. I think I can handle welding these up by hand for the first run, but for future production runs, I am definitely not going to be doing this by hand. I do want to make this more automated, or at least a lot quicker, so that I could pump out a whole bunch of these and maybe even start thinking about a parachute-based design so I can drop them on the enemy as well. So that would be really cool. To be able to use them as to be able to use them in such a way that I end up with multiple turrets attacking an enemy base, while I then fly in or drive in my attack vehicle, and then I can do more surgical damage to the enemy by using my own turrets in a more controlled fashion and just going straight after their turrets, while these ones provide targets and also do a bit of damage themselves. I'm not sure whether I'll use something like this in order to do that sort of damage, or whether I'll just make a whole bunch of decoys that I can drop that'll be heavily armored and hopefully take long enough to destroy that I can go in and do the damage myself under complete protection of decoys. But those are my sorts of thoughts I'm having about how I'll do the attack. I want to take advantage of decoys and parachutes and projecting blocks and manufacturing stuff on board a ship that can be remote piloted, because I think it'll be fun. It's a totally over-engineered solution to a problem, but those tend to be the fun ways to solve problems in Space Engineers. If you go nuts with the over-engineering, I actually think it's quite entertaining to try and deal with the enemy in that way. I don't want to use things that I feel are kind of cheesing it. Like, I don't want to build something that's capable of flying above the enemy base and then just dumping a whole bunch of rock and other things on the base, as there's really no way that the AI could possibly defend against that. Whereas at least by dropping decoys, if they had enough turrets, they could probably take me out anyway. So I don't feel like I'm being quite as cheesy about how I attack. And there we go. It only actually takes 3 loads with my personal inventory to fully construct one of these, so it's not too bad. But I still do like the idea of making some sort of automated construction. So now that that's done, we grind down this block that we placed to make it easy, and then the projection should appear. If it doesn't, you just switch the projector on and off and it should come back. Place down our new block, and then rather than start building the next projection now and having it awkwardly falling on top of the turret that's sitting there at the moment, I'm actually going to do the upgrades to the Ugly Duckling now. What I want to do is add a couple of landing gear, and I think the easiest place to do that is going to be either side of the drill. And to do that, what I want to do is place a couple of these, one there and one there, and then attach the landing gear directly underneath. I thought about placing them on the sides, but I think with the position of the connector and the shape of this turret, it might be nicer to have it stuck out the front. We should be basically grabbing straight onto the solar panel and carrying it around by that, which in some ways feels like carrying a laptop around by its screen, which is something you should never, ever, ever do. But this is Space Engineers. There's no structural integrity. As long as I don't smack into the solar panel, it should be fine. So let's grab control. Battery off recharge. Thrusters on. And what we're going to want to do is grab our landing gear. Make these a group. Save. Turn off show block and terminal. Since we've got our group, we don't need to see them. I don't want them on auto lock. What I want instead is to be able to lock them myself. So we'll go to our groups and switch lock. I prefer, when using landing gears to lift stuff, to have them on switch lock. The reason I like to do that is if I've got 2 landing gear that I want to connect to anything, and there's no great reason to have to, I just like it. It means I can wait till both are lit up yellow like this, and then hit my lock key, and I can carry everything away. Let's move this over here. Actually, it's still light enough. Let's go place this down where I want to set up the ambush. Why not? Makes some degree of sense to move this straight away. As the night gets darker, I probably won't be keen to do this, as flying back around this mountain I might be a bit terrified, but there's still enough light to set down at least the first one. So we know where the enemy base is, where that marker is in front of us, and I think we could use the cliffside of that this little row that goes out into the ice as a way to get the enemy within range of the turrets all at once, or at least a bit more likely for that to happen. Let's slow up because I'm going a little bit too fast. So 6.38k is out. Okay, let's hide down here. Actually, the real reason this cliff will be useful is it should allow me to then hide behind it if the enemy happens to catch up to me as I'm running back toward this ambush setup. Lower down. Must be getting close to the ground now. Don't want to smack too hard into the ground. And there we go. I have never used any sort of system like this. I honestly have no idea whether this is going to even work, but should be fun anyway. Now, I did put ammunition in that, didn't I? Let's just check before I go flying off. Yes, I did. Good. It's fully armed and it's ready to go. I'll just have to place down the other ones as I build them. And then the ambush will be ready for the next day. I'm really excited about this. Oh, I think this might work. I really hope this will work. And I don't feel like these are terribly expensive to build. Hopefully I'm right about that. Either way, with the butterball being as effective a miner as it is, I should be okay. But we all know how often I think I should be okay and everything just goes badly. Although, I have been very lucky avoiding Clang so far. But now that I've said that, it's probably going to be the end of me. So I'm going to spend the rest of the night building more of these turrets so that we're ready to attempt using them in the morning. Lifting up this next turret is going to be a little bit more delicate since it's currently just balancing on top of that row of small armor blocks. And there we go. Lock, lift. Excellent. Let's go deliver this one as well. One of the things I like about this idea, and I don't know whether it'll actually make any difference, but I like to believe it might. I like that it should allow the turrets to be able to avoid any damage while another turret is being targeted. So if I built a ship or built a land vehicle, I'd probably be placing the turrets fairly close to each other. And that means any stray bullets targeted at one turret are likely to hit another. So even if the enemy misses, they're still going to do damage to me in a way that's going to cause me problems. With this sort of setup, I can actually place the turrets far enough apart that should never happen. Hopefully the decoys are far enough from the turret that they'll avoid most of the damage to the turret if the enemy target the decoys first, which they should. No matter which direction they come from, they should see the decoys first, although there is the possibility they'll see the solar panel first. But I'm trying to set them up in a way that shouldn't happen. Oh no! I knew I shouldn't have said something about Clang not attacking me. Oh, that is not going to be easy to flip over. Nuts. Alright, I'm going to have to be much more careful. I'm going to actually have to drop these from a little bit of height before letting go of the landing gear. I think that that occurrence there is entirely my fault. What I'm going to do is try and rotate the ugly duckling around as far as it can before it starts drifting. Oops. So that when I level off, this is almost flipped over. I think that might be about as far as I can go. Oh, actually, let's try this for now. Lock that down. Let's go up. I'm going to have to tilt. Ooh. Let's tilt a little bit over. And I'm just going to chance it. Drop. Oh, how did we go? Oh, yes! It worked! Ha ha ha! I flipped it. Alright. I'll have to bring down the parts to replace that decoy that got destroyed, but at least I've learnt not to rest these on the ground completely before I let go of them, because that will end up with Clang problems. And there we go. My first experience with Clang in this playthrough. It happened! I am not going to be so arrogant as to believe I can avoid it now. I wish I hadn't said anything on that return before. That was a mistake. On that note, however, I'm going to be really mean. I'm actually going to end this episode here. I'll get the rest of these constructors separate to the recording. I would almost certainly edit that bit out anyway. And that means at the start of the next episode, we should be ready to place the remaining 4 of these down in our ambush, and then attempt to goad an enemy flyer into their range so that we can see how effective they are, and whether there's something I need to change in my design to make them more effective. There is that and plenty more to come, so I'll see you then. I have been very lucky avoiding Clang so far. But now that I've said that, it's probably going to be the end of me.